and your families for being with you at this important day in your lives. Each one of these nominees has been rated well qualified by the American Bar Association. Congratulations. That speaks to your competence and honesty. Your peers have reached that conclusion, and that isn't always the case with nominees before this committee in previous years. But the senators have worked with President Biden to make certain that each nominee that has come through here this year has at least reached this standard. So my congratulations to you. I also, since all of you sat through Judge Sanchez's previous panel questioning, you realize that if you want to aspire to be a judge at some point in your life, you should not write a letter to the editor when you're in college or do anything else that might get you in trouble 20 or 30 years later. In all honesty, that is the world that we live in as politicians, and that world is being superimposed on judicial nominees to have them explain things that they did not think were that important in their life, but turn out to be very important in the eyes of the senators. So many years ago, before I got actively engaged in politics, I practiced law in the Central District of Illinois and appeared before federal judges and had cases in federal court. And I quickly realized that most of the judges knew the law and certainly applied it as best they could. But there was such a difference in temperament with these judges. There were some that I thought were the best of the best, and others not so. I'd like to ask you about the question of temperament. I'm going to ask you a more specific question. You've all worked with judges and appeared before them. If you could think of an example, name the judge if you wish, of a demonstration of good temperament in a case that you've been involved in a court, wish you'd share it with us. Ms. Elliott?
Thank you, Chair Durbin. You're putting me on the spot to ask me to select only one judge. I've had the good fortune of practicing in New Hampshire in both state and federal courts over the course of 15 years and hundreds of clients, and I've appeared before a number of judges. I think the most important qualities that I've seen in a judge for temperament are humility and humanity. Humility to understand their limited role and to set aside their personal views, and humanity to treat all parties who appear before them equally. And there are some judges, many judges in the federal court that I could name, but I think you'll understand that I don't want to name any of them right now. I don't want to single anyone out. But I can name one person you wouldn't have heard of, but there was a Superior Court judge in New Hampshire named Kenny McHugh. He's since been retired. And every person who appeared in his court knew they were welcome there. He didn't stand on formality, and his biggest aim was to make sure that the parties understood what was going on and could explain their case to the judge. They had that opportunity to explain their case to the judge in whatever words worked for them, and he would take it seriously. And I think that that's the inspiration that I would hope to follow if I had the honor of being confirmed.
Thanks. Judge Lopez?
Thank you, Chairman Durbin. I have to agree with just about everything Ms. Elliott said, and I would add that I have found as a sitting judge now that walking into that courtroom with patience and being willing to listen to the arguments is something that all parties appreciate. Every day that someone walks in court, it might be my job, but it is their big day in court. And as long as they feel that the judge is attentive and listening and patient, that person feels like they had their fair day in court.
Thank you. Judge Menendez?
Thank you, Senator. Having appeared in front of so many judges over and over again, I've seen them show great compassion and patience and even-handedness in difficult circumstances, and I've taken lessons from each of the judges that I've appeared in front of. I'd also briefly name the judge that I clerked for, a judge on the Fourth Circuit who has passed away, Sam Irvin. He was one of the most humble people I ever met, and he really embodied the idea of never to get too big for your britches, and I hope that I have brought that same humility to the bench. Thank you.
Judge Ota.
Thank you. I've already mentioned Judge Moskowitz, who has been my mentor and my example for so many things. As his clerk, I saw firsthand just how kindly, with humility, with generosity of spirit, that he treated every single person that appeared in his courtroom, and every day as a sitting judge, I seek to emulate him.
Thank you. Mr. Urias?
Thank you, Chairman Durbin. I would say that as far as temperament is concerned, I think I started learning that about judges and how important it is to have a good temperament when you are a judge. When I clerked for Judge Ruiz here in the District of Columbia Court of Appeals, that continued on throughout my career. I've practiced in federal courts in Northern District of Texas, in the Southern District of Texas, in Arizona, in New Mexico. And I've had the honor and privilege to be able to say that all of the judges that I've appeared before have had very good judicial temperament, and that made a world of difference in some of the controversial and complicated cases that we brought back then. One individual, well, in addition to all of the district judges in New Mexico, who all have been just excellent judges in my view as far as temperament and the way they handle their courtroom. One example that I can speak to by name would be Judge John Roll of the U.S. District Court in Arizona. Judge Roll was shot and killed not long after our trial in front of him, at the same time that one of the members of the House of Representatives was shot and killed in Arizona, or not shot and killed, but shot and injured in Arizona. Judge Roll was a man who had been known to be a very conservative judge, and we were bringing a civil rights case in front of him, and there was some very controversial and complicated issues that he had to decide. And I think he really exemplified what it means to be a judge with good judicial temperament and be fair and impartial. So I've always sort of looked to him for an example of that.
Well, thank you for honoring his memory today, too. Senator Grassley?